Picture this. The only ground you have is a slab of bare gray concrete. No soil, no lawn, not one bed of dark crumbly earth, just a hard, flat, sun-baked square of concrete out the back, the paved patch everybody looks at and says nothing grows there. And on that bare slab I am going to show you 7 vegetables you can grow so well you would stop buying them, counted down to the one that turns the whole thing on its head. Because here is what almost nobody believes. There are crops that actually grow earlier and heavier on a hot concrete slab than they ever would in a cold garden border. There is a whole family of the herbs you overpay for the most that would rather sit on that dry, sharp, sun-baked concrete than in your good garden soil. And there is a way to grow the heaviest, most boring, most rebought vegetable of all right there on the bare slab, and lift the entire crop without a fork ever touching the ground. Let me show you that one first, because it is the moment that flips it in your head. At the end of summer, you walk out onto that bare concrete, grab a grow bag standing on it, tip it straight over, and a pile of clean, fresh potatoes comes pouring out across the slab, with no digging and no forking, and not one of them speared in half. Potatoes you grew standing on a patch of ground that supposedly grows nothing. That is not a fantasy, and it is not a trick. A bare concrete yard looks dead and useless, but it is quietly sitting on 3 gifts a normal garden fights all year to get. And I will be honest with you in one sentence up front. You do not grow in the bare concrete itself, and you do not grow a field of grain. You bring the soil to the slab in bags, troughs, and beds, and let the concrete do the draining and the warming. But the fresh vegetables you actually load into a cart every single week, the salad, the roots, the tomatoes, the beans, the herbs you pay a fortune for and throw half away, that whole side of the shopping you can grow out there on the bare concrete. Because a slab already beats most gardens at the 3 things that matter most. It sits in full open sun with nothing shading it, it drains cleanly with no stones and no soggy ground to rot your roots, and that pale concrete soaks up the day's heat and breathes it back at night like a warm bed under your plants. Give it the one thing it does not have, a medium that holds water and food, and it grows. So here is the countdown, 7 vegetables you can grow on bare concrete and stop buying, starting at number 7 with the fastest win of the lot. Number 7 is the fastest proof the slab works, the radish. I am starting here because most people quit before they ever believe a bare concrete yard can feed them, and a radish gives you the answer in about 3 to 4 weeks. Stand a wide, shallow trough or a low tray of loose soil right on the concrete, scatter the seed thin, water it, and that is the whole job. Here is why the concrete wins for radishes. That warm slab pushes heat up into the shallow soil, so the seed germinates fast and the roots swell quickly, quicker than the same tray would move on cold, damp ground. And here is the trick most people miss. They sow the whole packet at once, get 40 radishes in 1 week, and then none. So instead you sprinkle a short row every 10 days or so, and you pull crisp, peppery radishes for months instead of a single glut. The leaves go straight in a salad too, so nothing is wasted. A shallow tray on a warm slab hands you your first homegrown crop before most gardens have even warmed up. But if radishes are the fastest thing you can grow out there, the next number is the one you rebuy the most and waste the fastest, and the slab keeps it coming for weeks from a single sowing. Number 6 is the salad that never quite makes it out of the fridge. Number 6 is the fresh stuff that goes slimy before you can eat it and that you rebuy every single trip, salad leaves. On a bare concrete slab you do not grow a pot of it, you grow a production line. Line up a run of wide, shallow troughs along the sunniest edge of the concrete and fill them with loose leaf greens, leaf lettuce, spinach, rocket, and a little chard. Here is why the slab wins. The concrete warms the troughs early and drains them sharp, so the seed comes up fast, and the roots never sit in cold, soggy wet, which is exactly what rots supermarket-bought salad in your fridge. And here is the one trick most people get wrong. They grow a lettuce, wait for a full head, and cut it down, and it is gone. Instead, you sow close and harvest cut and come again, taking only the outer leaves and leaving the growing point in the middle, so one sowing hands you salad for weeks, not one bowl. Sow a little of each along the troughs a couple of weeks apart, and as one row is picked out, the next is coming ready, a rolling supply instead of a glut, and then nothing. A run of troughs on that slab can hand you a fresh salad most days of the week, about a minute from yard to plate, from a patch that used to grow only weeds in the cracks. But the next number is the one you overpay for, the very worst of all, and the dry, sharp concrete is secretly its favorite home. Number 5 is the flavor the slab was built for. Number 5 is the corner of the produce aisle you overpay for the worst, the fresh herbs, and it is the one the concrete loves the most. Think about how they sell them: a few cut sprigs sealed in a stiff plastic clamshell, one of the highest prices by weight in the whole store, and they turn to slime in the fridge in days, so half of every pack goes in the bin. It is the worst value on the shelf and the easiest thing of all to replace. And here is the surprise that makes this number perfect for a bare slab: a whole family of herbs, the Mediterranean ones, rosemary, thyme, oregano, and sage, actually prefer dry, sharp, sun-baked ground. They come from hot, poor, stony hillsides, so a warm concrete slab with free draining pots is exactly the home they want, and the wet, rich soil people usually give them is what rots them. Line up pots of the ones you cook with most right out where the slab is hottest and driest, add basil and parsley, and keep a pot of mint on its own because it will bully everything next to it. Here is the spike, and it is almost too easy. One living herb pot you snip from all season costs about what a single clamshell does, except it never stops. The Mediterranean ones come back year after year and shrug off the dry heat that kills fussier plants, and green onions will regrow from the white root ends you were about to throw away. So push those scraps into a pot on the slab, and that little patch is effectively free forever. Flavor from the crop your concrete was built for, and free onions from your scraps. But the next number takes the one thing that makes an open slab hard to garden and turns it into a wall of food. Number 4 grows straight up off the concrete. Number 4 grows in the one place a bare slab has going spare, straight up into the air, climbing beans and cucumbers. A flat concrete yard is wide open with nothing on it, so instead of crowding the ground, you go vertical. Lean a slim trellis or run a few strings up a light frame, stand one pot at the bottom, and send up runner beans, peas, and cucumbers. This is the heavy hitter for the space it takes, because a climbing bean is one of the most generous things you can grow for its footprint. One pot no bigger than a dinner plate, a few strings, and the plant does all its growing in the air instead of sprawling across the concrete. And here is the clever part: that green curtain of climbing leaves does two jobs at once. It feeds you, and it filters the wind and throws a little shade, calming and cooling every pot sitting behind it on that hot open slab. There is a bonus down in the pot too. Beans and peas are legumes, so they quietly pull nitrogen out of the air and feed it back into the soil, giving something back instead of only taking. And they do the generous trick: the more young beans and cucumbers you pick, the more the plant sets, so a single row up a string can hand you beans and cucumbers for weeks from a pot you can step around. You have turned the slab's biggest weakness, being flat and exposed, into a living wall that feeds you and shelters everything else. But the next number is the crop everybody assumes you need a greenhouse for, and a hot concrete slab grows it better than a shaded garden ever could. Number 3 is where the concrete stops being a problem and starts being the whole point. Number 3 is where a bare concrete slab does something a normal shaded garden simply cannot: peppers and chilies. Here is the whole secret, and it is the reason to grow them right out on the open concrete. A bare slab is usually wide open with nothing around it. no overhanging trees, no crowding hedge, so it sits in full sun from first light to last. And that concrete is a heat battery. It soaks up the sun all day and holds real warmth, and after the sun goes down it breathes that heat back up into the plants standing on it, like a free warm bed with no glass to buy. Peppers and chilies are heat lovers that sulk in a cold, shaded border, so this is the surprise that makes the whole video worth watching. They crop earlier, longer, and heavier on a hot concrete slab than they would in the open ground of a normal garden. Stand your pots of peppers and chilies in the most open baking part of the slab, give them a short cane so the breeze does not rock them, and pick the first ones as soon as they color, because the more you pick the more the plant sets. The hottest, most useless-looking corner you own turns out to be the best pepper spot on the property. But if the concrete makes peppers better, it does the exact same thing for the crop at number 2, only bigger, and that one fills a bag a week all summer. Number 2 is the king of the container garden. Before I count down the last 2, stop and look at what that bare slab is already holding. Trays of fast radishes, a production line of cut-and-come-again salad, pots of the Mediterranean herbs you overpay for the worst, a living wall of beans and cucumbers, and the sunniest corner of peppers and chilies on the property, cropping better on hot concrete than they would in the ground. That is already the freshest and the most expensive corners of the cart, all grown on a gray slab that used to grow only weeds in the cracks. And the last 2 numbers are the heavy hitters, the 2 that actually earn the word never, the container king that fills a bag a week all summer, and at number 1, the boring heavy staple you lug home in a sack, grown and lifted right there on the bare concrete with no fork in the ground. Quick question while we are here, and I do read every reply: which one vegetable are you most tired of paying for? Tell me in the comments. I am genuinely curious what tops your list. Now, number 2. Number 2 is the container king, the tomato, and a hot concrete slab is close to the perfect place to grow it. Everything peppers love, tomatoes love more, and they give you more for it. That open, unshaded slab in full sun, plus the stored heat breathing back up out of the concrete at night, plus the extra light bouncing off the pale surface into the leaves, all of it can ripen your tomatoes earlier in the year and hold them going later than the same plant would manage in a shaded, sheltered border. Stand big grow bags of tomatoes in the most open part of the slab, push in a sturdy cane, or tie a string up a frame so the plant has something to climb, and feed and water them steadily, because a plant carrying that much fruit in a bag is thirsty. Here is the spike: one healthy plant in a bag on a warm slab can hand you tomatoes by the bowlful for months, and just like the peppers, the more you pick the more it sets, because the plant is only trying to make seed and every fruit you take pushes it to flower and try again. A few bags of tomatoes on the concrete quietly replace one of the most rebought fresh items in the whole shop, and they taste like nothing you can buy. But the crop at number 1 is the one that flips the whole idea in your head, the heaviest, most boring thing in your trolley, grown and lifted on bare concrete with no digging at all. Here is number 1. Number 1 is the heavy, boring, expensive staple you carry home in a sack every single week, the potato, and growing it on bare concrete is the moment the whole thing clicks. Potatoes need nothing from the ground at all, which is exactly why they belong at number 1 on a slab. Stand a few deep grow bags or old compost sacks right on the concrete, fill them with a decent soil mix, and push a couple of seed potatoes into each. That is the whole setup: no bed, no digging, no ground to break. Here is the trick that makes bags beat a border. As the plant grows, you keep mounding more soil up around the stem, and it keeps setting potatoes up the buried stalk, so a tall bag turns a couple of seed potatoes into a surprising haul stacked all the way up. And here is the payoff I opened the whole video on, the one that flips it in your head. When they are ready, you do not dig. You grab the bag and tip it straight out onto the bare slab, and a clean pile of potatoes rolls out with not one of them speared or cut in half. Then do the same thing for your carrots, beetroot, and parsnips, and meet the last surprise of the countdown. Root crops grow straighter, cleaner, and longer in loose, stone-free container mix than they ever do in stony garden ground, where every buried stone forks a carrot or stunts a parsnip. So the very thing a bare concrete yard forces you to do, grow in clean bags and beds of loose mix, is exactly what roots want most. The heaviest, most rebought corner of the whole cart, the carbs and the roots, grown and lifted on a slab that supposedly grows nothing. That is number one, and that is the countdown. Now here is how you run all 7 so it actually replaces the shopping instead of just decorating a slab. Here is the part that ties 7 crops into one working garden instead of 7 separate pots, and it is the reason a bare concrete yard can genuinely keep you out of the vegetable aisle. The whole thing comes down to one idea. You do not fight the concrete, you use it. A slab hands you 3 gifts a normal garden fights all year to get: full open sun, a warm heat store, and clean stone-free, pest-free drainage, and it is short on exactly one thing: a medium that holds water and food. So the system is 4 simple rules. First, bring the soil to the slab. Everything grows in bags, troughs, and beds of good soil and compost standing on the concrete, never in the bare concrete itself, so you get the slab's sun, warmth, and drainage with real growing medium on top. Second, put the right crop where the slab is at its most extreme. The peppers and tomatoes go out in the most open, baking light where the stored heat is strongest, and the herbs go where it is driest, because that is not a compromise for them, it is their favorite home. Third, feed little and often, because this is the one honest catch of the whole build, and I will say it plainly once: containers on concrete cannot pull water or food up from the ground the way a garden bed can, so they need regular watering and a little steady feeding. A light feed often rather than a big one rarely, and a mulch on top to slow the water leaking away. That is the trade for all that sun and drainage, and it is an easy one. Fourth, the big one: never leave a bag bare. The day you tip the potatoes out, refill that bag the same day, something fast in the troughs, something climbing on the strings, never a patch of empty soil wasting a month of the best sun on the property. Do those 4 things, and the slab is always growing something, which is the only way 7 crops add up to a real dent in the shopping. And one quiet bonus of building it all in bags and beds, standing on the concrete: you never dug or altered anything, nothing is permanent. You can slide a bag to chase the sun, and if you ever move, the whole garden comes with you. So that is the countdown: 7 vegetables you can grow on a bare concrete slab and stop buying. Fast radishes for your first win, a production line of cut-and-come-again salad, the Mediterranean herbs you overpay for the worst finally sitting where they want to be, a living wall of climbing beans and cucumbers, peppers and chilies cropping better on hot concrete than in the ground, the container king filling a bag of tomatoes a week, and at number 1 the heavy staple: potatoes and roots you tip out clean on the slab with no fork in the ground. This channel is called 1 Acre Blueprint, and by now the real lesson is clear. The blueprint was never really about the acre, and it was never about the quality of the ground. It is about how hard each square foot works, and a bare gray slab, used properly instead of written off, can keep a family out of the vegetable aisle for most of the year. Do not try to build all 7 at once. Start with 1 this week: a tray of radishes for a crop in a few weeks, or a bag of potatoes for the satisfying tip-out, or a pot of rosemary and thyme that finally has the dry, sunny home it always wanted. Subscribe to stay on the 1 Acre Blueprint, because next we take this exact idea one step further, wrapping the whole yard, the walls and the fence line into one year-round food garden grown on the hardest ground there is. And tell me in the comments, of these 7, which would you grow on your slab first?